Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later, we're going to be talking about an attorney's general suit against energy. You're not going to believe it. But first, one of my favorite topics, political correctness on college campuses. Love it, love it, love it. From the AP, Kristen, Wyatt, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
You glad the session's over? You got time to breathe?
Oh, for sure. Having a great summer. It's warm and nice, and I can't wait to not go back to session until January.
I'm going to try to make sense out of that sentence in a minute. Tyler, Silvy, thank you for being here from the Greeley Tribune.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for having me. You're the one who kind of broke this story, so let's start up here. The University of Northern Colorado has, I don't want to say a speech code, but a speech code. It seems like it has a ninja warrior group of people ready to pounce on someone if they don't do things the right way, and it has been blessed, in fact, facilitated by the administration. Help me understand this story.
Well, I don't know if they have like the full ninja costumes, but they probably have shirts. But it's called the Bias Response Team. At UNC, it started.
I just want to make sure. Bias Response Team.
Bias Response Team.
So this
BRT.
I get a Ghostbusters kind of vibe that they've got a truck that they can go out and they run out when somebody says something offensive. They can jump and spray them or something. The Bias Response Team.
Yep,
it's
that's what it's called.
Right, what is it?
And UNC is not the first campus to do this. There's actually at least 128 universities across the country that have a Bias Response Team. The first one, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, East Coast First Amendment advocacy organization, tracks these. I think the first one was in Rutgers University in 1992. So, but they have been growing exponentially.
What is it? Explain it to me.
What they do is, I mean, they seek to create an inclusive, welcoming environment on campus, and they do so by responding, not in Ghostbuster fashion, but in some way to what's called bias-motivated incidents. So, oftentimes,
hell, I'm already going to lose my cookies on this one. So they want a wholesome, fostering, welcoming environment, and so they go after. Say it again. What was the term of art you used?
Bias-motivated behavior.
Bias. All right. What is that?
It could actually be, any sort of negative comment directed at any of roughly 20 groups that UNC identifies on their website. I mean, including, race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, even, a pregnant woman or religion. All those sort of things are categorized as folks who are protected by this group.
Protected from what?
Well, protected from speech that they deem offensive or they deem as creating a hostile learning environment or something to that effect.
All right. You went to journalism school. I thought the idea of higher education was to have a free flow of ideas. Isn't that what intellectual pursuits are? I say something, you counter with what you believe, and we test each other. How does this work?
Well, I would say back to the J school thing of, I think the crime number one here is the same that you see in other places in other stories, which is felony bad PR. How no one saw that the name Bias Response Team would sound just like Thought Police or Speech Police or, something like that, and be the kinds of thing that riles up conservative talk show hosts and that kind of thing. How did they not see this coming? The kind of response they're getting. But in all seriousness, I do think there's lots of things going on. Number one, there's lots of people on campuses that weren't on campuses 2 generations ago. And campuses are now often, even not for-profit, the student tuition pays for more and more of the education. And they are in the business of making it feel like a warm and safe and welcoming place and telling parents, you can spend $65,000, whatever a year, sending your kid here. They will be nothing bad will happen to them while they're here. So they do have kind of a business mentality interest in keeping the customer
they don't
happy.
Like. Being offended is not safe. There's no constitutional guarantee against being offended.
Sure, but I think the schools would say, hey, there's also not that we're not firing people or executing them. We're trying to address cases by talking to people, like you said, when you see speech that you find offensive or that you don't like, the response is to talk about it. And that's what these bias response teams are meant to be. Let's come in and have a conversation. Let's talk about how a transgender student would see this talk, where I would say a generation ago, a transgender student would never complain about it in the first place because they didn't have an avenue to do that. So
my inner eye roll is happening.
Yes, exactly.
What brought this to light, Tyler? What turned this into a story that the Tribune did, the Post did, and people are opining about?
We got a tip in March, I think, about a poster on campus being defaced. It was,
heaven forbid, that's never happened on a campus before.
One of 680 posters actually that were put out with the hashtag Language Matters, which is a popular national hashtag, and the poster in question said essentially it's trying to correct language or get people to think about their language, and they say don't say all lives matter because that disrespects the Black Lives Matter movement. Somebody wrote the N-word on it. That same poster was also defaced with free speech matters, or all lives matter, and that sort of thing. And that's when I found out that these posters were put up by the bias response team, and that this team was actually connected to UNC. It's actually housed in the Dean of Students office. It's taxpayer funded. And so that raised some concerns, and I looked into it, and we wrote a story in April. The documents came out later, and did a story then. Senator Cook became aware of it. He's a UNC alum, wrote the letter to Kay Norton, and here we sit today.
All right, Kay Norton being the president of
UNC. And by the way, she agrees with you that the name was maybe a poor choice.
Poor choice, yeah.
No, the whole thing is a poor choice. So let me see if I got this. We understand hashtag Black Lives Matter. Get that point. But so somebody says all lives matter, and somehow that's offensive to somebody. No, isn't that part of just dialogue?
Well, and that was my question to UNC folks.
And what did she say?
At the time was that because this is university sponsored, essentially state sponsored, they have to know that this is a controversial topic. That, I mean, whether you believe one way or the other, there are folks that believe one way or the other, and putting up one side of it, i.e. you shouldn't say all lives matter and sticking to one side. So I asked them, can't they see how that would have a chilling effect on speech?
Boiling this down, basically you have a state entity, a governmental entity, the university, putting out a political message on taxpayer money.
And to his point about this, some advocacy group that watches First Amendment cases like this, and this is something that's really alarming to academia too, which is this, like, they call it like the bloat of administration, that there's a lot of people now working in universities that weren't there 30, 40 years ago, and a lot of these people are not trained, PhD researchers. These are people that they run things like a business. What do you do when you have a business and there's a problem? You stop the problem, and they're not really coming from that perspective of academic liberty, and don't have those kinds of
and you wonder why.
But they act the way you would if you had like some dissent. Exactly. Well, how would you act if there was dissent at my big XYZ Corp? You would tell employees to stop making comments in the break room. So they had that same approach at a university without the same background to respect. So I do think a lot of it can be traced to growth in the administration too.
And you wonder why college is so damn expensive, and everyone's whining, forgive my student loans, give me free education. Well, part of it is we've ballooned the administration with a bunch of busybodies who are out there on taxpayer dollar putting out hashtag language matters.
Well, and it is very
freedom
corporate,
matters.
as she said. I don't get the impression, at least at UNC, that this sort of thing is ideologically motivated. I see it as very business motivated, and in the end, they're protected by this. There was a case at the University of Oklahoma, I don't know if you remember, where some fraternity members chanted something that had the N-word in it and hang the person from a tree, and the president threatened to expel them, and he had the whole community on his side. That would have been a violation of those students' First Amendment rights. But who's going to sue a university for the right to say the N-word?
Right. But the right to say all lives matter is a different thing. Yeah. You mentioned that State Senator John Cook wrote a letter that appeared in CompleteColorado.com and got picked up in other places. What was the CU president's response? Where are we in this?
The UNC?
UNC president's response.
She admitted that the bias response team went too far. It's important to note that there were 250 pages of documents that I went through, and I found 4 or 5 instances where, we questioned them on that. So a lot of these didn't rise to the level of punishment, but she is looking to make changes. She is going to institute some training for staff members. They may change the name, bias response team.
How about
I saw
just
today
getting rid of it? Why does it exist? This is a government facility, and if people want to say things that are offensive, this should be the safest place for them to say that. It's a college campus, and it's government funded. Why? What are the chances that she's just going to pull the plug on this and get rid of it? Or do we need legislation to do it?
I'm not sure if the legislation question might be for somebody else. I'm not sure if she's going to pull the plug on it. I can say that they are looking seriously at changing some things. To be fair, these types of complaints existed before at UNC. They were generally generally taken by housing and residential life. The bias response team stepped in to fill that role. Now, you can argue philosophically whether the existence of a bias response team increases the number of complaints. UNC's HR director, in that recorded interview that we have on our website, said that they're getting 20 to 30 complaints about in-class discussions by professors per semester. They used to get that in a decade. So.
Because they're encouraging it, isn't it? I mean,
they do. I would say encourage it on their website. They list, here's the things you can, how to file a complaint, this, that, and the other thing, and obviously the 680 posters on campus. It's out there. It's visible.
At taxpayer expense.
Yes.
Good.
Partial taxpayer funds. But I would say the great thing about this story, the story is news gold, because it's very rare to find a story that young people are sharing on social media left and right, and also old people like us are spitting out their all brand while they read the newspaper, getting outraged about this. Kind of speaks to everybody. Everybody has an opinion, but I would say props to UNC for it's a raging debate within academia how to both be really inclusive and of all viewpoints. I heard someone at the Aspen Ideas Institute last weekend say this is kind of the oldest debate in higher ed. In the early days when all colleges were religious based, and then during the Civil War era in the antebellum South, if you questioned slavery as a means of production, you would lose your jobs. And there's still a feisty debate, Ward Churchill at CU, that goes on all the time. And I think it's healthy for higher ed.
But I guess part of the difference is Ward Churchill has tenure, there's all this other stuff. We're talking about students, and we're talking about our tax dollars. And I want them to learn to read, not to put out a bunch of language matters, soft PC, cuddly kids that come out into the workplace. This is why Donald Trump is having success, I think, partly because of a backlash to this hideous PC movement that is now institutionalized at taxpayers.
And it also raises an interesting debate, I think, as states, including Colorado is maybe the standard bearer for it, as states reduce how much they spend on higher ed, and more of it is borne by the students themselves. How much do they, as customers, have a right to exert? I want a place where I don't have to hear language I don't like. And what business is it? You keep saying it's taxpayer funded. If it's it's 20%. At what point does the student pay so much that it's their business, not the taxpayer?
It's almost flipped from 75% 30 years ago. And I wrote about what I called the Comcast scholarship, which was students had canceled their room and board, and UNC offered them 2 years free if they just come on to school.
Tyler, thank you. Kristen, thank you. Stay tuned.